Yeah, I gotta go get my. Just gotta go grab
Yeah. This is your last chance to get out if you don't want to.
this. I'm in.
All right. You got it?
Yep.
Good deal. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Spiritual Underground podcast. As always, my name is Dan Reeves. I am your host here today. If you're just coming across the Spiritual Underground podcast, we are primarily 12-step recovery based. That's where the foundation of everything that's been, most of the things that's been good in my life have come from. I also like to explore other ways in which people get sober, or to, as we just discussed, this thing called recovery, which I define as to go back and reclaim that which was lost or stolen. Some of mine I give away, and some of it was stolen from me, and this process of the 12 steps has helped me get it back. But we don't have a monopoly on that, so I also interview and talk to people who got sober with other methodologies. And then I also like to have guests on that are bringing something to the table, just on what to do. What Gail just used the word limitless. That we really, as a human, it seems as many of us try to put these limitations on ourselves for one reason or another. And that's a lot about what she's here to talk about today. I don't have any idea if you have any kind of addiction or any recovery in your past. We'll get to it if you do, or if you don't, it doesn't make any difference. Uh, so I won't try to introduce. Oh, I do want to say one more thing. We've got another podcast, my sponsor, Christopher, and I. It is called the I Am One Two podcast. The number one. It looks like the iPhone kind of thing. It's a small I, the letter M, the number one, and the number two. And I might superimpose some of that on top of here, and it's on YouTube and all your podcast channels as well. Christopher's rewriting a book, and the I am one too just really stands for I'm another struggling human trying to be better day by day in this world, just trying to be a better version of myself every day. And we started 12-step programs for it. And it's not just alcoholics or addicts. So if you're in a 12-step meeting, generally you'll hear people go around and identify, my name's Dan, I'm alcoholic. My name's Bob, I'm alcoholic. And we go around and say, my name is Dan and I am one too. And it just has bloomed into a thing. So please check that out. Like and subscribe over there, like and subscribe here. So now we'll get to the business at hand. I know Gail Taylor is a musician and she's also an author. I'll let her pick up the rest of it about how we arrived here today.
Okay, thanks, Dan. And yes, I am a recovering addict, and I have an adult child that's a recovering addict. But I think I'll start my story with the end. And
Okay.
that because that's kind of why I'm here, or
Right.
how I got here anyway. I was a financial advisor for 25 years, and I was quite good at it and quite successful. And I started taking piano lessons when I was 58 years old. And I fell in love with music. It just started flooding back into my life as listening to it. I'd never taken a lesson before in my life. And so after 2 years, I thought, I'm going to retire sooner than I had planned, and I'm going to study music full time. So at 61, I sold my practice. I started studying music full time, private teachers, Berkeley. I got to go to Berkeley School of Music. It's one of the best music schools in North America. But because I was doing it online, I didn't have to audition. Good thing because I wouldn't have got it. But I was taking like bass guitar and songwriting and keyboard and ear training. So 2 years into that, I thought, maybe I'll reinvent myself as a musician. And when I shared that story with folks, I kept getting the same reaction. I kept getting, wow, Gail, that's so inspiring. I'm going to go do Badeep Badeep, something they had put on the back burner. And honest to God, Dan, I was hearing it over and over from strangers. So I thought, whoa, the heck with being a musician. I'm going to come out of retirement. I'm going to start my company, Gail Taylor Music, and I'm going to become a keynote speaker, and I'm going to share my stories and the tools that I use to work through it to help folks become their best selves. And so I have like a catalog of 18 inspirational songs. I just wrote a book called Curveballs. And I have three different topics. One's empowering women, one's leveling up, and the third one's addiction and how to. I have a really soft spot in my heart for the loved one of addicts because, I was listening to one of your podcasts with Tom and how the parent and the loved ones really it's very challenging to navigate where am I helping them and where am I causing harm to them, and yeah, and I studied that for years and years, so that's how I ended up getting here.
Yeah, we tend to have interesting stories around the block. It's just another parallel. I was an engineer for 28 years, and they tapped me on the shoulder in 19 and told me they didn't need me anymore. And it was my only adult job I've ever had, and I had no idea what I was going to do. But I have a love for woodworking, and I'm really handy. And it just organically, I changed my career from khaki pants and button down shirts and that to have a wood shop in my backyard. And now I'm getting to do something I really like to do. The other job was okay and I was good at it, as you said, but the universe had other plans, and
That's
how seamlessly it slipped in, like similar to like just said, hey, I'm going to learn the piano.
Yeah, and
Never
that's it,
knowing that this is
like,
where it was going to come.
that's
Go
the
ahead.
message, reinvent yourself, man. You could reinvent yourself, doesn't matter what curveballs life threw at you. Um, I'll share a little bit of my background. Well, maybe more than a little bit if we're going to talk for a while. When I was 12 years old, my dad died, and I didn't do well with it. I actually kept him alive in my mind for 2 years. Like I was traumatized. I pretended that he was a spy for the government and that he was off to save the world and that they had to say that he was dead for our safety. And I kept him alive for 2 full years. And I came from a family, there was 6 of us. Mom was in her mid-30s at the time. So now she's a single mom with 6 kids, and she moved us from a small town to a multifaceted city. I mean, she told me years later the reason for the shift was because she knew she could get a job and that way she could keep us off welfare and keep us together. That's all she was trying to do, right? Keep us off welfare and keep us together. But I mean, she would go to work and she would come home like literally putting one foot in front of the other, exhausted, have dinner with us and go cry herself to sleep because her soulmate just died. And so I spiraled. I couldn't navigate the city. It literally chewed me up and spit me out, and I started doing drugs, alcohol, and reckless behavior at the age of 12 on a daily basis. And she'd fall asleep early and I'd sneak out the house and hitchhike to a seedier part of the city, hang around with older kids, get stoned till 2 in the morning, and then hitchhike back home. And, statistically, I'm lucky I'm alive, right? When you look at the statistics, and I stayed in that level of dysfunction for about a little over 10 years. Till my mid 20s, I was using mind altering substances every day. And that's when I hit my first bottom. And I woke up one day and I said, oh, I made a mess. The mess in my house, the mess in my soul. There's got to be more to life than this. And that was the first little spark of hope that I had that, yeah, I have some control over this. I can do something about it. And that was my first turning point. Wasn't the last one, as we both know. It doesn't work that way. It takes a few tries. But that was my first turning point. And actually, when I started down that path, the first book I read was Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. A lot of
Yeah.
people have read it. People that haven't read it know about it. Rich to him wasn't exactly money. It was just focus on a passion and a purpose and believe in yourself. And because I was a dysfunctional 20 something year old, I made it money. I want to be a millionaire. That's what I decided I was going after. and I did it, but the cost was there was cost to it, right? We were in the 80s at the time, me generation, right? Work hard, play hard. And unfortunately, I had a 3-year-old son and I was working, and I was still in denial. I was pulling myself out of this rut I was in, but I still wasn't admitting that, the fact that I used mind altering substances every day wasn't anything other than just partying. And so I would work long hours. I started becoming successful with my A type personality. And then I'd work hard, play hard. I'd go to the bar at night. I made sure my son was with good caregivers. And I told myself that, because he's with people that really love him and want to be with him, that's okay, that the quality of time I have with them is what matters, not quantity. Well, we know that. That was bunk. And then the story takes a worse turn because when he was 12 years old, I moved across the country and I brought a new man into his life. I brought a new school into his life, new friends. And guess what? He spiraled. He became an addict and he went deep. He went into opioids and now fentanyl and in fact when he really started to spiral, that was the first time in my life that I stopped using mind altering substances daily. I had mellowed it out a lot. It was a lot less. There was more alcohol and marijuana and less of harder stuff, but it wasn't till I said, "Oh my God, I got to help this kid. What's going on?" And I started reading and studying about adolescents and troubled teenagers and addiction. And I went, "Oh, oops." Oh my God. I actually realized the depth of my own problem. And then I started studying everything I could about addiction. And I started to understand boundaries and enabling and codependency and compartmentalizing. And, I ended up in contracts with social services and he went to jail. I'm sharing his story with his permission. He's in recovery now. He's one of my best friends. We both talk about it. We don't really think he would be alive today if he wasn't in recovery because of the
Mhm.
drugs that he did do. I mean, I'm in Canada and we had 6,000 overdose deaths from opioids and fentanyl in 2023. I think you guys had about 100,000. Like it's a
I
big
think that's the number I've
number.
heard.
Yeah, yeah, it is so scary what's going on right now. And so
The drug
that's
supply is contaminated. Back when you were doing it, when you bought it, that's what you got. Now you don't know what you're getting at any particular time. You don't have any idea.
no, you're right. You're right. You don't. And it's pretty scary stuff to watch. I know you talk about the 12-step program and I've done it and I know I have friends that go to NA regularly right now and they're going to funerals on a regular basis. Like
Mhm.
it's not and so yeah, a big part of the advocacy and the work that I try to do is to talk to the families. I wrote this song called Wings, and Wings is a song about giving yourself permission to be happy even though you're on a parallel journey with somebody that's in active addiction. Because if all you're going to do is worry about them and stress out, you're not going to have the strengths and the tools to be able to help them when it's time. Right now, for everybody, it's going to be different. But like my boundaries were my son hated me. He hated me when he was in active addiction for all the mistakes I made. He came by it honestly. And so I'd get the phone call asking for money. And when I said no, the verbal abuse was out of control. But I got the boundaries set and I got to the point where I could say to him, look, I'm not taking your calls to get verbally abused because I'm not going to give you money. But if you ever want to get into a rehab, please, please make me your first call. I will be your support network 100%. I will find you a bed. I will find you transportation to that bed. And I did. a number of times. Like, he went through rehab a lot before it caught, and that's okay too, right? It doesn't you don't always
Yes.
get it the first time.
Keep getting
You
back up.
can't as the parent, you can't have the expectation that because you went through this journey and you got them into rehab and then you set them up in an apartment that they're going to be okay, because that's out of your control. It's them that decides, whether they're going to be okay. And so you can be an advocate, you could be a support, but you don't have to be a punching bag. And you most certainly don't have to put your own life on hold. And that, I heard this on another podcast, and this is me to a T. I come from a place of healed scars and not open wounds. And I thought, oh my God, that is so me.
Yeah.
There is, yeah, this journey that's what it is. It's the journey of life. It's the game of life. And you get to pick how you play.
Yep, you do. Your reactions to things. I had to use a statement here lately that I will do just about anything to help you get well, but I'm not going to do anything to help you stay sick. And
Right.
giving money and doing those kinds of things. I've got a 19-year-old daughter. It's been having a path too, and I'm very grateful that I know, I know what to do, but I can't make her do it. uh, and we do that little three-step dance, that right now things look good at this moment, and I'll take them wins. At the
Yes.
moment, everything is good. So I'm grateful for that. But I totally, I thought it was interesting. If and I don't know that sometimes I hang up on things, but did you say your father passed away when you were 12? Did you say
Yes.
12?
Yeah.
And then did you say that you moved your son away from town when he was 12? And it's a
Yep.
lot of, look like a lot of real similar
Yeah.
things going on. It's an interesting thing how it's almost like how can that really how because you only see it in the rearview mirror, right? You don't see it while you're standing in it, but you turn around and look back and go, how did that happen? One of the ones that gets me is how many people like how many how many people who have an alcoholic parent may marry an alcoholic spouse. It would seem like if you've had alcoholic parent, that would be something you would be watching out for.
Right.
But they tend to walk right into that. It's interesting coincidences or whatever you want to call them.
Well, and you know how they talk about it being genetic too. So this is sort
Hmm.
of a combination of the genetics and the emotional, or the upbringing. So it's both, right?
Yep,
But
right
one
is.
time when I was at the rehab, I was visiting. It was family day at the rehab, and I asked one of the counselors. I said, "How come I never had to go to rehab to get clean?" And he said, because you did what we call hitting a high bottom. And so for some, I was always considered somewhat of a functional addict, where there's four stages to the disease. From the beginning stages where you're just having your 3 or 4 drinks every day, to the end stages where you've lost everything and you're on the street, and we're all somewhere in between those. But when I was at this rehab center, they had the people that were there do take a Bristol board and put all these squares. Here's your parents, here's your grandparents, here's all your siblings, and just X's, right, with maybe an initial for what they were. And then after you had all these squares, they said, now we want you to put an X in all the squares of the people that are either alcoholics or drug addicts. And every single one in the room had 3/4 of their Bristol board with X's, which is exactly what you just said, right? Whether it's genetic or whether it's the upbringing, it's a lot of times in your culture, in your family.
Yep. And I think there's like an intersection of some sort to where if you got the genetic something in your past and the genes is there, and then you hit, especially when you're young, but it doesn't have to be, you hit something that traumatizes you. And when that intersection happens, that's how to make an alcoholic or an addict. That is how, if you wanted to make one, you could make one.
Right, yeah.
Those two things happen, and anybody's level of trauma can, losing a father at that age is super. I mean, that's It doesn't have to be that big either. Everybody handles their trauma differently. And whether if it's a one big thing or a little thousand cuts, instead of a big thing, you usually dig into this people's backgrounds. I've had the honor to get to sponsor a lot of people. And you start putting that thing together, and it just seems to be that I can tell them their story as soon as they
Right.
begin to leak it out.
No kidding.
Uh,
Well,
you
the
know,
other thing too with the 12-year-old thing, when I started reading about, how to help my son, one of the things that I read was because 12 is that puberty stage, right? And so one of the things that I read was, uh, so when you're 12, you're not supposed to do any changes. They need routine. So the big thing is if you can, don't change their school, don't move, don't get a divorce, don't die, right? Because while they're going through that puberty and trying to figure out how to go from being a child to an adult, the most routine you can make their life, the better the transition. And so, yeah,
makes sense to me.
yeah,
And
I
I look back and
actually
say,
ended up becoming a real lifelong learner. I had dropped out of school the day I turned 16.
"Mm,
Again, I mean, I was getting stoned every day, no time for school. And then I ended up going back and studying full time. Like I'd said, I was a financial advisor. I was managing $130 million. I ended up getting an MBA at Queen's University. I did my analyst degree with Wharton. I did some executive training with Harvard. Like I just really, really got into the world of learning and leveling up. And I enjoyed it so, so much. And so studying, like I've been studying personal growth and peak performance for 40 years. So now, like with my book, being able to share all the tools, hey, look, life threw this curveball at me, and here's some of the tools I use to get through it. Whether you're talking about limited beliefs or imposter syndrome or all the pieces that I talked about in addiction, the codependency, the enabling. Sometimes you do things, and I did things for my loved one that I thought I was helping, but all I was doing was making it more comfortable for him to stay in addiction, right? Like you got to drive him to his dealers to get the drugs because if you don't, he might steal a car. Like what kind of rational thinking is that? So yeah, I learned how to, yeah, I spent many, many hours learning how to work through all this and yeah, I encourage all your listeners to do that too.
you was talking about, having a steady, a routine at those ages. I started drinking, smoking pot when I was about 14, and I've done 300 or so of these podcasts, and I mean, 90% of them are in the 12 to 14 range when they started.
Right.
Almost all of them. There's an outlier here and there, but the same thing. You start throwing these chemicals in you when you're in that age, and you're crippling yourself. You're handicapping yourself so badly because that's when your brain is forming and when your ideas are coming about. And now those formative years, and then you come out the end of that at whatever it is. Let's just say it's 22 for you or whatever. When you said it was about a 10-year run, but like the last 10 years, didn't do anything but defeat you. You don't really have anything to stand on there. And another thing where I was going is was that these kinds of things we can let them define us. You could have some traumatic thing happen to you, and you wear it like a victimhood thing rather than understanding that you can pick up the ball and start again today. You can completely change directions. You can it doesn't have to be something that you already know how to do, like music. It can be something completely new to you. And a lot of times I think that's actually maybe better for you because it is such a huge, it takes a lot of, it takes a lot of your energy to learn something brand new. When you use that energy, you're exercising muscles, so to speak, that help you repair quicker. Uh, I always tell my new people, we talk about passion. And with my guys, I'm always saying, what do you like to do? and they try to dig in them and see what get them to when they get, when you get them talking about it, they are passionate, and you find those kinds of things and say, okay, we're going to do more of that for a while we're doing this recovery thing too. So I want you to start taking care of Bob, like Bob deserves to be taken care of, and find these passions and chase them down. Or maybe if it's a passion, just like something I always wished I could play the guitar. Let's get to it. I watch people as they exercise that passion while they're trying to get sober. I see a better result. Same thing with if they will do physical exercise while they're working on their. We always you always hear mind, body, spirit. 12 steps does a lot for your mind and your spirit, but it really doesn't do anything for your body. And so when I see people like plugging multiple holes in their life at the same time, they can make up a lot of progress in a short amount of time. 6 months down the road, and they can't believe this new life they've got.
Yeah, yeah, I totally resonate with what you say. And that and the like the purpose, the passion. I always tell people that go find a job, like whether you're reinventing yourself. I mean, people are reinventing themselves because they're in recovery. People are reinventing themselves because of COVID. There's a lot of different reasons, right? I reinvented myself because I wanted to. But, if you have to reinvent yourself, what my thought is that go for the purpose and passion. So it's like you said, and okay, what's your passion? Well, it could be anything. You like dogs, go get a job at a vet or start up a little business walking dogs. Like put yourself in a situation where at the end of the day you got to bounce in your step and you're like, "Whoa, did I ever have a good day doing that?" We spend half of our waking lives at work.
Mm.
Half, right? So whether it's a hobby or your job, I always think people's jobs and careers should absolutely be something that they're proud of and that they're not stressed or drained at the end of the day. And
Something they
and
like
you
to
know,
do.
I know, Dan, and I get from people, oh, that's easier said than done. But I'll tell you something, it's not. I think it's not. My son, who I've already shared some stories about, works in pest control and he loves his job. And I said, what do you love about it? And he said, Mom, I get to knock on the door, and there's a person there that's really stressed out and worried because they have cockroaches or bed bugs, and sometimes it's marginalized communities, and their home has been invaded. And I'm able to say to them, hey, no worries. And I explain to them what I'm gonna do. You go for 4 hours. I'm gonna come in your home. I'll be respectful. Here's what I'm gonna do to get rid of whatever you have, and then you'll be able to come home with some peace of mind of going to sleep and not getting in bed. And
Yep,
he
helping
and
people.
oh, he says,
She's
I'm
helping people.
helping people and I'm proud of it. And like that job would be my worst nightmare. I don't want to go anywhere near cockroaches or bed bugs. Like, no, right? And that's the point I'm making is that two people can both have jobs they hate. They could switch jobs and both have jobs they love, right? Like, it's just figure out. I actually do a whole chapter on this right at the beginning of my book on, list all the things that you like doing and then figure out what kind of jobs would be available that I'd be able to be in that field. So, and
Yeah,
then you
that's
have to
great.
figure out, do I have to go back to school and where, and work through, there's a lot of different steps, but being reinventing yourself in sobriety is exciting and
Yeah.
there's no limits to where you can go with it. I
Yeah,
do
I
a lot of
see miracle stories every
yeah.
day.
Oh, I do a lot of podcasts for success after addiction. That's what they're called. Success people that became successful after addiction because it's you that decides where you go.
And I'll tell you, you might want to look at it and think it's hard, and it's going. And a lot about fact is, a lot of stuff worth having is hard. It is. That's just the way the universe works. But what's going to be even harder is in 40 years, and you're past any, you're down the road a ways. What's going to be hard is turning around and knowing you could have done it back then and you didn't do anything.
Right.
Uh, you know,
And
it's a
it's hard to be in active addiction. Even be like your
Well,
life is
even if you don't
hard.
reinvent yourself though, and you just don't enjoy this thing called life and go after it, we get this one little
Oh yeah.
life, and I can muddle my way through 80 years probably without doing much.
Right. Yeah, yeah, you're
But
right.
there
You're
will
right.
be that regret out there at the end of, man, I coulda or I shoulda, or I do when I'm not woodworking, I run around and handyman, and I get that exact same thing
Right.
feeling from like your son. I'll walk up and somebody's stuff isn't working, something is broken, something is not going. A lot of times it's a whole list of honeydew stuff. Say a honeydew list, and it'll be two things: either honey, don't do that kind of stuff, or there ain't no honey around. Either way, and I get to go walk in there and fix all this, this list of stuff that they've no telling how long. Sometimes things have been broken for years, and I come in there one morning and fix all their stuff for them, and I walk out with a little money in my pocket, and they got a big smile on their face. Accidentally said to somebody the other day, I said, "This is the best part of this job right here." I said, "Is when I'm leaving, you guys are smiling." And
Right.
she took it to think that I meant that they were happy I was leaving. I was like, "No, you're smiling because your stuff is fixed. That's why you're smiling."
Right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, there's that element.
And you have what I call the giver's high,
Yeah, you do. And
right?
that
That's the
seems to
giver's
be an element of a successful life too. If you was start making some lists of stuff, you gotta be helping people. I think.
absolutely.
If, and it doesn't make any what angle it is, whether if you're writing a book to help people, or you're doing a podcast, or you're fixing their broken faucet, or you're making their bugs go away.
Same thing.
Uh, those are all things where you're helping somebody.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And another big turning point for me was the whole internal dialogue thing, because folks
Mm.
that first get into recovery, myself included, we're very negative and we're very hard on ourselves. And so we're constantly telling ourselves that, yeah, no, I can't do that. No, yeah, no, that, or I tried that before, it didn't work. And so what I ended up doing, there was this one book that I read say that was called Go For It, I think. Gail Olenkova. She was a long distance runner. I'm pretty sure she was American. And she wrote this book about, when you're in your head having negative thoughts, find a mantra or trigger to shift it. So I used hers, which was garbage in, garbage out. So if
Mm.
I found myself in my head, so let's say I'm going to do a proposal for a keynote speech, and I'm saying, oh, no use me filling that out. Why would they hire me when there's so many good speakers? Or they've already heard my message. Garbage in, garbage out. And I'll yell it with the windows rolled up in the car. Garbage in, garbage out. And then I'll reframe it and say, oh my God, thank God I stumbled on this one. This is a perfect, perfect speech for me to be giving. I can help these folks become their best selves. How amazing is this? And so training your brain to do that, to shift from the negative to the positive, is work, just like we talked about everything else, right? It might take, if you find yourself you're sabotaging a lot and you're negative a lot, think about it in terms of 18 months, maybe like training for a marathon, right? It's not going to happen overnight, but don't stop. Every time you find yourself thinking negative, find your word for it, shift, and after a bit of time, your subconscious mind is going to get the message. Oh, we're winners. We go after these things. We're happy. We get our challenges. It actually works.
This you can reframe things like that. It takes there's this is that neuroplasticity, I guess is what they say. Is that I've trained myself one way for a long time, and turning that I got a hand. I think AA has probably more cliches and sayings than any other single community anywhere.
Organization.
I'm probably a little biased, but we're like a big cruise ship when we're turning. We got a big circle. We're not like a jet ski that can turn on a dime. I want to be the jet ski, right? That's what I
Right.
want.
Yeah.
But no, we're not. We got a big turning radius to get turned around and get going back in the other direction, and it will work if you just keep on doing it. And the big one for newly recovered people is that I call it the disease or some kind of thing in there that tells you to go get a drink or tells you to, and it's constantly knocking you down and it's saying you'll feel better if you just do this. And you've got to get that voice to turn off, and it's going to be a while, but it'll turn off. You'll be
Yeah.
able
The
to get that.
stinking thinking.
Yep. Stinking
Gotta get
thinking.
rid of that stinking thinking.
Yep.
And that's it. That's when you go garbage in, garbage out. That
But what's
drink.
really good and what I like about what you're saying there too is like it sounds like there's like, okay, here's the tools. There's a lot of people out there are telling you, you just gotta do this, you just gotta do that. But I need some tools to help me with how to do that. That's what one of the things the 12 steps has given me. It's given me a set of guidelines that pretty much everything that happens in my life between me and my support group and my sponsor, we can figure out. We can place it in the right 12-step folder and process it and move forward, no matter what happens. And the reframing thing is not really a 12-step tool, so to speak, but I do hear it a lot, and the way you laid it out there gives somebody it's kind of like when we tell people they need to learn to forgive. It's like, how do you do that then? How do you do that?
Right. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
give me some tools that'll help me with forgiveness so that we can practice some forgiveness and turn that boat around, get it holding going the other direction.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I know because that was what in my book, most of the tools that I used that I talked about were tools that I used and that worked
Sure.
for me.
Right.
And so I'm throwing out stuff that, hey, this worked for me. It could pretty much work for anybody. Just, give it a try. But some of the tools that did, some of the things that worked for me, you might think, well, that's not for me. I'm going to try something different. And that's okay too, right? We can't all expect it. We got different personality types and we can't all expect to get the same results from doing the same thing. So and that kind of share that, what resonates, take what resonates with you and use it to become your best self and to become stronger because yeah, that's all it is. It's just a matter of hey, foundation, right? And I think you kind of alluded a little bit to this. One of the chapters I talk about is uh, what you eat. So it's your nutrition, your exercise, and your sleep. Those three are your foundations. And you don't have those foundations in balance when you're in active addiction. It's just not something that we do. And I think that, when you're in recovery, you got to be careful that you don't get caught up in the nighttime caffeine and donuts that you could get caught up with in meetings.
Yep. Yep.
And you learn a whole new, okay, what's the right nutritional balance for me? And exercise, like I'm not telling you to go run a marathon. I'm telling you, if you're not doing anything right now, go for a walk for 20
Go
minutes a
walk.
day, right? And
Yep.
and then tools for getting better sleep if you're not getting the right amount of sleep. Because if you can get those three things down pat, I really believe that you can remove the majority of the stress out of your self, because a
Yep.
lot of it is caused by being overtired, malnourished, and not enough exercise.
Sedative. Yep. Yep. No, those are great things. And it's, again, it's not in the 12 steps, and some people are really hard line about it, but I use those exact same tools when we're talking to new guys because most people who are detoxing, even in the post-acute withdrawal stuff, the later on have a lot of insomnia and they have a lot of trouble getting to sleep, and that little voice tells me, I know one way to get me some rest. And no, we're not doing that anymore. That's
Right,
what
right, right.
I
Yeah,
self-talk myself like that, and reframe stuff that, a lot of times it was that simple. No, shut up. Yeah, you're not talking to me today. I don't want to hear your voice. You're not going to win today. I don't want to hear you talking. And then redirect to something positive and,
yeah,
uh, and just keep on practicing that. But yeah, get enough sleep and, eating thing is, uh, I think, we've got poison out there we're calling food. So it doesn't even mean, you put some real nutrition in you, you'll feel better. And that's a whole bunch of that we're talking about. If you just don't feel good, life's not going to be very fun. But if
no,
you get your sleep and you get some exercise and you eat well, those three things, like you said, are foundational on just feeling good. Just wake up in the morning and feeling good.
yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people get into addiction because, I mean, like you said, that 12, 14 age group, but Also, people are self-medicating because
Hmm.
they have anxiety or depression and or some other mental disorder, and it's just really, really hard on them, and they can't handle some of the pharmaceuticals, so they self-medicate. So then when they go into recovery, these things pop back up. And there's tools that can be used for them too. I remember reading this one book on anxiety because my son has anxiety. He has a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of depression. And so we read books together and we talk about the exercises. And one of the exercises for anxiety, you just reminded me about it when you were saying, yeah, no, we don't do that anymore, was this Johann Hari. He wrote
Yep.
about 40 books, I think,
Yeah.
on the brain. And so he was saying that a little idea was to ha he called it the dragon and the wizard. So your anxiety is the dragon and you're the wizard. So you go have a little tea party with the dragon and you know, like let's say you got to walk your daughter down the aisle and you're going to have too much anxiety at the wedding because everyone's staring at you. You have a little tea party with the dragon and you say, you're not invited to the wedding, but don't worry about it. Stay here, have your tea, have some cookies. I'll be back in an hour, right? And you literally play, you use the imagination. That's another tool that I use in the book,
Mm.
imagination, right? So you use the imagination and you tell the dragon not to come. And if you're at the wedding and the dragon shows up and you start getting anxious, say, no, no, you weren't invited back to the tea party. I'll be home. And you just literally allow yourself that 1 hour where there's not going to be anxiety and you're going to go through the exercise because you can't will anxiety away, right? It's going to come back. It's a chemical thing. It's going to come back. You have to live with it, just like you have to live with addiction and recovery. So you have to learn how to manage it. You have to learn how to understand it. And some folks in recovery, that's the next step, right? While you're working through
Yep.
your 12 steps, is understanding, okay, is there underlying, we talked about my situation, the underlying problem was a traumatic death, but sometimes it's just a self-medication because of some other mental issue. And mental issues and physical issues in my book are the same thing. I don't care if you have a broken leg or schizophrenia. Your brain is part of your head. There should not be a stigma around any of this. That's just craziness.
That is one of the things, and of course, the addiction and alcoholism does have that stigma. It keeps people from coming in and admitting it because they don't, we don't want to admit our kids have it. We don't want to admit that we have it, and we've been dug through the mud. And uh, most people that come into addiction look like they have some sort of mental imbalance. Whether they do or not, you can't really tell until you get the dope and the booze off of them. I always tell guys that say they're depressed, and I said, "Yeah, man, you've been guzzling gallons of depressant every day for years. That will depress you.
Yeah.
Let's get this off of you." And get you sober and get you in recovery and get you started on a new path. And then we'll look at you and see uh, and we can talk about getting you some help in those departments. But right now, you just be, you'd be throwing gasoline in the fire to add some more chemicals in.
Yeah, it
Uh,
doesn't, yeah, it makes it worse. It doesn't make it better.
yeah.
It
I'm always a
numbs
little
you for
funny.
a while, but
Yep. And I get it, and I know the whole harm reduction thing, but I still struggle with the fact that, like so many times, people are prescribed drugs for their drug problem. And I get it because some of it is, man, I just can't get a day sober without this medicine in me at the same time. And if that's going to keep you alive another day, and off of those, like my daughter was doing those pain pills from Mexico that you don't know what you're rolling the dice every single time you take one. And if it keeps you off of those, well, then I can totally understand. And I had to change my stance about Suboxone because of that. Because I would rather see or wake up tomorrow morning than to be some dude who doesn't believe you're sober if you're on Suboxone, which I was at one point. I was
yeah.
a little bit of
My
a,
did my that's how my son got clean. He used Suboxone for 5 years.
yep.
He was
That's
on
what it takes.
Suboxone
That's what
for
it takes
5
today.
years, and that's what it took to get him off of those opioids and off of the, yeah. So, there's so many different tools right now that society, like we talked about at the beginning of this call, how both our countries are have a crisis. We
Mhm.
definitely have a crisis right now with the fentanyl and the carfentanil. Our young people are dying, with us losing 6,000 people in Canada and 100,000 in the US. It's like in my country, the statistics, over half of them are between the ages of 20 and 39. Like these
Mhm.
are young lives,
Yeah.
right? And so whether whether you agree or disagree with the safe injection sites or the Suboxone or the 12-step pro, like you need all of it. You need all of the different, and right now the stigma part, I think people are starting to wake up and see, oh no, like I had a situation, I'll share this with you. I am so proud of my community for what happened here. We had a mental health breakfast and the speaker was talking about addiction. And at the end of the breakfast, there was 250 accountants, lawyers, business people there. At the end of the breakfast, the facilitator got up on the stage and said, "Hey folks, when you're leaving the room, just to let you know, we have a table set up by the door and we're handing out naloxone kits." Narcan. So if you want to grab a kit, they're free. If you see somebody overdosing on their way to work or on your way home from work, because these folks all work downtown, you can, there's instructions inside and, you'll be giving them a needle. But don't worry, if they're not overdosing, it won't hurt them. If they're having an epileptic fit or something, you just misread the situation. I could stab myself in the leg right now and nothing would happen. But if they are overdosing, it'll reverse it. And here's where I got so proud. The lineup was so long, they ran out. So,
Mm.
like I said, these are accountants, lawyers, bankers, financial advisors, business executives that are lining up to get these kits to put them in their briefcase and their purses just on the off chance they're going to be able to save a life on their way to and from work because they're
That's
seeing
cool.
it and they know they're seeing it, right? And so, oh yeah, yeah. So I think we are
We're
evolving.
getting better. We are,
Yeah, yeah, people are getting
definitely.
more educated and more understanding because it's closer to home. You
Yeah,
try to
that's another thing.
you share your story with someone and their reaction's gonna be, "Oh, yeah, that's happening to my nephew, my sister." Everybody is not more than 1 degree away from this.
Everybody is impacted by it. And if you're not yet, it's because it's not yet.
Yeah.
Um, as you said something, that Johann Hari, however he says his name, he also said the thing about the opposite of addiction is connection. That gets tossed around a lot. Have you heard that? The
Uh,
opposite of addiction is connection. He got
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That
I
was a
have
TED
heard that.
talk, and now
Yes,
it's
I
everywhere. You hear it
actually
talked about a
listened to
lot.
that TED Talk of his.
Yeah, that's a really good, and I get that, because now I have this community of specifically my home group is a men's group, and that works really good for me. Frankly, the opposite sex was a bit of a distraction in my early recovery.
Right.
But now I have this group of men. I just tuned up the home group list a minute ago, right before this, and there's 70 names on there of guys that actually care about one another, guys that actually show up for one another. And I can promise you some of them are around town today doing something together. There's a couple guys that's got a couple few years with them, and they got a couple guys that's got a couple months with them, and
Right.
they're doing that connection thing along with it. And people are understanding it's finally getting around. Bill Wilson says it in the big book was written in 1930, published in 1939 about he hopes that this book will help educate people to that this is a disease, and that was way before it was actually classified as a disease. You was just a loser, right? That's kind
Right.
of the way we kind of at some level want to think about drug addicts and alcoholics. They just can't get their S together. And
Right.
it's not. It's a illness. It's a mental illness, no different than depression and schizophrenia and those kind of things. You've gotten sick, no different cancer, really. Your cancer, nobody gets mad at you when your cancer comes back. They don't get mad at you. If you relapse, people get mad at you for relapsing like you did it on purpose.
I know.
But it
I
is
know.
getting a lot better.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. There's no question that it's cancer and addiction. It's all one's
Yeah.
physical, one's
Yeah.
mental. It doesn't matter. It's not even it's mental because it's in your brain, but it's you've got a chemical imbalance going on where that's physical.
Yeah.
They're all
Yeah.
physical, right? So yeah,
Yeah. It's a
yeah.
pretty
I
fine line in there to, to
and I
do that.
think like so because I talk about it a lot to try to help folks, realize that it's okay. Um, I also say, like, it's okay to be private too, right? You don't have to be like me and shout it from the rooftops and share your story. That doesn't have to be your journey. You can stay private. But there's a difference between being private and being secretive because, there's an expression that you're only as sick as your as your secrets. Well, there's a reason why that expression is because if you're working so hard, and you're just so terrified, what if people find out? You're going to create stress. You're going to create emotional turmoil within yourself. So, being private, but being understanding that, hey, if somebody does find out, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And so, you can just, put your shoulders down, relax, and enjoy your life.
And everybody, that's why the Alcoholics Anonymous was anonymous, is because of all the stigma behind it. You could lose your job if they found out about you. And some people do wish to keep it more to themselves. And other people like me have multiple podcasts
Yeah, like me,
and
I write a
shout.
book about it.
Yep. Shout from the mountaintop. And then we need, it's just wherever you're comfortable, whatever you're comfortable. What I found is, and what I do see is in early recovery, I am ashamed. I got shame wrapped up in everything. I feel like there's something wrong with me. The negative self-talk is off the roof. I'm just a screw up. I can't get my stuff together, and all that kind of thing. And I want to keep all that a secret. But then when I got recovery time and started getting better and life turned around, now I just want to go out and help everybody get what I've got today because this is available to you. It's not a zero sum game. If you will come with me, I visualize when I've got my new guy, I'm just slowly walking backwards, just going, come on, follow me, come with me, just come. Oh, I know that sounds silly, but just keep coming with me, come with me. And how many of my guys will tell me, like, I remember when you were saying, and I thought you were full of bull crap, and now I see that you were actually telling me the truth. Yep,
Yeah,
you will do that
exactly.
sooner or later. So you
And
write so what about I want to get
oh,
back to your go ahead, finish your thought, but I want to talk about
okay,
your music.
you made a comment about, worried about losing your job and stuff. I encourage people that if they want to go to recovery, don't even quit your job. Go to your HR department and explain to them that you have a disease, that you are an addict and you're looking at going to recovery. And there is often you can go on short-term disability, you can go on long-term disability. Sometimes you can get the benefits to help pay for part of the rehab hospital. And that's an opening that a lot of people don't realize exists. They
Yep.
think, oh, if my job finds out I'm out of a job. Well, wait, 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 wait. Depends on your job because I've seen what I just shared with you. I've seen
Mhm.
people that worked for big financial institutions go to HR and say, I need help. And back at work 4 or 5 months later, 3 months in rehab, another month or so getting settled back into the outside world, and then back at work. And
Now they in this country, they have to allow you. They have to give you that benefit. That's a law. That's I
so,
believe if I'm not right, if I'm correct, I think it was 1972, and I think it was Richard Nixon signed that into law that classified alcoholism as a disease and therefore insurance to cover it. And that was the kind of the thing. The deal was to get, of course, you know how that is to some extent, the insurance world, but it got people to get insurance benefits so that they can go get rehab and not lose their jobs. And every employer, I don't know, I shouldn't say every, but I'm going to use that word anyway. I don't like to be that broad in general. But every employer is going to give you one chance anyway. They don't have to necessarily if you're trouble and you just keep on going back. But my employer sent me to rehab 3 different times,
right.
uh,
I'm glad we're having
and
this
kept paying
conversation.
paying me for it the whole time and worked it out so that I still had a paycheck. Matter of fact, one of the times I was supposed to get short-term disability in it, which was like 2/3 of my pay. And for whatever reason, for that entire duration, I was getting all of my pay. It was, I was, somebody, the universe was on my side. we subscribe to a higher power in 12-step recovery, one of your own
There you
understanding.
there
And
you go.
that's exactly what I chalked that up to. It's what my sponsor, hey, look, you're getting taken care of. You're getting your chance, man. The universe is working to help you out here. But that is a
Right,
big stumbling block for a lot of people that they'll lose their job. My sponsor actually is a 22-year chemical dependency substance abuse counselor for a rehab place in Louisville. I live
okay.
right near Louisville, Kentucky. He's been sober 40. He just celebrated 40 years in May, and it's been working for over 20 in, as he says, in the field. So I like feel I've got an unfair advantage as him as my sponsor. I've got a guy that really knows his stuff.
Right, that's yeah, you're pretty lucky. The other thing with that long-term disability too, I know here, it's not taxable. So
Mm,
you only get 2/3 of your salary here, but it's equal to 100% because it's a non-taxable benefit.
right.
So you're taking home the same amount of money you were taking home with the 100%. So that ends up working out too.
Does work good. I don't think that's the case in the States, but uh, there's a path to recovery for everybody out there that wants it. That's really the underlying thing there. There's another one of these things that the disease is powerful. It is almost like an entity. I like to think about it as like a parasite that hijacks your operating system, like in a computer. When you get a computer virus and it takes control of the computer and does what it wants with it. And at some level, alcoholism addiction hijacks me and makes me do things that I don't really want to do. I wouldn't be doing if I was fit. It's got me. It's not even. It's like there's a joystick cord coming out of my left foot, and something else is driving Dan around. It ain't. It ain't me.
Right. Yeah.
It is super. It is in the 12 book in the Alcoholics Anonymous book. It's him. He simply says cunning, baffling, and powerful, and
Right.
it really does do that. So
Yeah, it hijacks
let's
your
talk about your
value.
I was gonna
It
talk about your music a little bit.
Okay. All right. That's awesome. So, yeah, so I told you the story at the beginning about starting when I was 58 and then deciding that,
And
so
you just
lots
went
of
and
times,
took piano lessons, looked on the internet, something, did something, and figured out somebody was giving piano lessons, and
yeah, yeah, that was pretty much it. With absolutely no background, I started
yeah.
playing scales and, and I just loved it. Like,
I
I
would
did.
think a teacher would like someone like you. You'd be like a clean slate,
Oh, yeah,
you know, a
and
musician.
I would practice for an hour or so a day, so my teachers were crying, "She practices." They
eh,
were so excited because they have those little kids as their students that don't like to that don't like to
Yeah, yep.
practice.
And you also get like these adults who have some music in their background and they won't come in with a clean slate. It's hard to do, you know. It's like
Right, yeah.
I know a little of this. I already know you're not teaching me anything new.
Right,
Uh,
right. Yeah, no, I
it's
didn't do that. So, and then what happened, songwriting ended up being my superpower. And
mm,
I joke and say it's because I talk so much and songs are just stories. You just take the story and turn it into a lyric. But because of today's technology, I didn't need a record label or an experienced artist to say, I'll take that song in order for my song to come to life. I was able to bring it to life. So I work a lot in Nashville and I go down there and I work with the studio that has studio musicians and good ones. Like my keyboardist goes on tour with Tim McGraw and my bass player with Miranda Lambert. Like these are talented folks. And then I also hire the vocalist. And so I write the song, and then I have a friend down in Nashville that's a musician, and she comes in and co-writes it with me and changes things up a little bit. Because sometimes I'll put in words that you can't sing. So she'll say, "Well, Gail, let's do it this way," and then we'll put together a little demo and send it over to the studio, and then I'll get in on the call on Zoom and say, "Okay, this one's country. This is the key I want it in. This is the speed I want." And so they'll run through it and say, "What do you think?" And I'll say, "Perfect," or "Take that up," or "Take that down," or I did a little pop rock series so they want to put a banjo in. I said, no, no, this one's not country. No banjo in my pop rock. And then I do some songs that are like social songs. Like I did one called Crossroads, and it was a song on equality when we were going through the whole Black Lives Matter thing and going through the me hashtag me and then I did another one called Let Your Freak Flag Fly for the younger generation about, it's okay to be yourself, even if yourself is different. Just, just love yourself and surround yourself with people that love you. Don't worry about the ones that don't get you, because that's reality. We're all different. We got to be able to agree to disagree. So I have a little bit of that kind of music out there. And then, so all my songs, I gave myself the moniker Guilty as Charged. So that's
I
my
saw
main
that.
guilty as charged. Yeah. Well, I'm a little out of the box, right? Because I'm not, I do play the keyboards on maybe five of my songs, but a lot of my songs, I'm not even in the song. I did some lyric videos. So I got a channel on YouTube with all my lyric videos, and I usually have some cameos where I'm in the where I'm in the lyric video. Just a fun thing.
Yeah.
But it's all inspirational music. Every story is about some curveball that life threw at me and how I was able to, I wrote the story about it and how pulling through it. Like one was One and Only, and it was a story about me and my husband. I've been happily married now for 35 years, but it took four marriages. I mean,
Mhm.
when you're in active addiction, relationships are tough. You're not there for them. You're just not there for them. And you think it's their fault. Yeah, so I wrote a song about that, and I wrote a song called Choices with Carolyn Dawn Johnson. She's a country musician she's from Canada, and she's just really, really amazing. And this was right after COVID. So it was all about, the sharks are trying to pull you under. But, in the case of addiction, the shark could be the addiction, it could be COVID. And so, yeah, it's about you got some choices to make. You get to make your choices. And so, hang in there and go for it. So
You
yeah,
made me think of
I'm a rose color glasses girl, if you didn't notice.
it's uh people who are not, I end up with some brutally negative people who just cannot seem to bend that back into positivity. Just everything is right off the bat. I can tell you when something's happening to them, they're going to go all the way to the worst case every single time. And they got some sobriety. It's just wasn't. Well, just like you said, we're wired different. But the curveball thing, I was talking to a guy the other day, and he's in early recovery, and he's having a number of setbacks and things. And he was talking about, he keeps on getting sucker punched, is what he would say. And I was thinking, and I was like, well, sometimes life just is series of sucker punches between not. But really, I think that curveball is really a better way to put that, is that you're going to get life is going to be a series of curveballs thrown at you, and you're going to have to figure out what to do with them. It's the old making lemonade out of lemons and that kind of thing that you, but it
Same
does,
thing.
because life is difficult. It is. It's challenging. There's we talk about, like, how many things, think about how many things you're responsible for doing every day, even on a day where you get to stay home. I mean, you got to wake up, you go make your coffee, you go brush your floss and brush your teeth, you use the restroom, you got to feed yourself. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff, even when you're staying home, that you got to do. And then when you go out in the world, those curveballs come flying. You can kind of dodge them at home a little bit, uh, and not have them thrown at you. But when you're out walking the streets and doing the things like work life and other things like that, it's a challenge, and you got to come up with some kind of tools, some, I won't say coping tools, but just some tools to be able to manage that kind of stuff.
Yeah, almost you have to accept it. You have to
It's
embrace it, right? It's
yep.
not the curveballs that get thrown at you. That's like you just said, you're going to have curveballs. You'd have to be living in a bubble to not have curveballs. Life would be boring if you didn't have
Yep.
curveballs. So everybody's going to have curveballs and they're going to have lots of them. But it's not the curveballs that matter, it's what you do with them
Right.
and how you look at them. Okay, so this is a curveball I wasn't expecting. What am I going to do now? I tend to look up at the universe and say, okay, what lesson are you trying to teach me on this one? you know,
My sponsor asks me that a lot too. He says, "Okay, Dan, what's the universe trying to tell you?"
Exactly,
I don't,
exactly. Where's the lesson here? And so, and sometimes if I get the same curveball too many times, I'm there. Okay, I know you're trying to get me a message that I'm not that I don't seem to be getting, but can we work through this one? So yeah, it's not to me. That's the first step in this. Is not every time something comes at you, whether you call it a sucker punch or a curveball, whenever something comes at you, expect it and say, okay, why did I, what, it doesn't even matter why it happened. It's just, what can I do with it? What can I do with this sucker punch? What can I do with this curveball to make the best of it? And when I trained myself to do that, and like I said, it's training. You talked about being wired one way. Sometimes people are just really negative and maybe they're a little bit wired that way, but maybe they can change the
trading.
wiring. Maybe they can make the choice to change the wiring. And I almost want to call it brainwashing yourself, right? Because you're
Mhm.
training yourself to instinctively operate on a higher level than you already are operating on because you deserve it. So why not? Why not rewire yourself so that you get the happiness that you deserve and that you're not, self-sabotaging when things aren't quite going your way? Because
Yeah.
this stuff I'm sharing with you, it's available to everybody.
Mhm.
It's our attitude. Our attitude's everything,
Right.
right? It's
It
just,
is.
you decide what your attitude is. Every day you decide what your attitude is.
We are programmed as much as anything. We don't like to think of us as being humans as being programmed to what we are. But I'm sure if I would dig into this guy's negative thing, his mom or his dad or somebody in his life is that same way, and that's why he's like that. And a lot of what we talk about now, I am one two podcast is rewiring that faulty programming that was put into us.
Yes.
And just it's not a blame game. You're not trying to cast any stones about it or anything like that, but just identifying these patterns in our lives that are not serving us. It goes all the way back to Buddha, doesn't it? To let go of that which doesn't no longer serve me. And
And
when you get
yeah, yeah,
these
yeah. And even on that note, in this peak performance space, there's a thing that they say where you're the average of the five people you spend the most of your time with. You become the average of them. So if you're going to hang around with five negative people, it's going to be pretty hard for you to break out of it. And some people will come back to me and say, well, Gail, how am I going to shift that? Like I live with my sister and my mom and they're both negative. Well, there's go back to that imagination. Sometimes if I have to get me some successful musician time, I'll go on YouTube and I'll pull in Paul McCartney being interviewed for 2 hours and I'll have him in the background in my music studio and I'll be like I'm in the audience and spending some time with Paul McCartney. Like, there's a lot of ways that you can be exposing yourself to the people that are living the life that you want to live.
you know recovery audio is part of the reason I do this podcast and the other one. Uh, when I was early in recovery, I had attached everything: TV, music, sports, everything was attached to my drinking and using. And if I would listen to music, I couldn't help but, find myself, crying on listening to those, Lost the Dog, the Truck, and the Wife all at the same day, country songs and stuff. Um, and I started listening, somebody turned me on to speaker tapes that there's people out in the world doing 12-step recovery talks. And I just kept it running I had a job where I could run it in my ears all day long. And it did. I told people it brainwashed me. My brain needed washing. I have used that exact same term, and it did. It helped rewire me. Now, like trying to talk a new guy, and I see it happen when a guy will take that suggestion from me, and he calls me every day, and he talks about what he heard today, and what you can hear it when is in him that he's listening to this uplifting stuff in this direction. He is listening to stuff that's in the trajectory of the way he's wanting to go. Uh, I don't know. I just say he gets better faster.
Right. Yeah.
So that is a
I
cool
think
tool, no
you
matter what
just
you're trying
made
to
me
do.
realize something I didn't realize before. You know how I had shared with you that when I started taking piano lessons, music came flooding back into my life as somebody that listened to it. And I didn't realize I had stopped listening to it. And when I share
Mm.
this story with people, when I'm doing my keynote speeches and stuff, I often share with them that music went out of my life because now when I'm driving in the car, I'm listening to economic books and I'm studying
Ah,
studying finance. But I just realized something that music would have been a trigger for me because I went to every concert all the time through that whole time period that I was in active addiction, and I went higher than a kite. And I was going to see Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones and Alice Cooper, and like I loved rock music.
it's a
And
Stones thing behind you, isn't it? That a Stones
yeah, yeah,
poster behind
yeah.
you?
Yeah, it is. I got Elvis
That's
Presley on this wall and
that makes a lot of sense. I did the same thing. Concerts, I got hundred concert ticket stubs. You don't get them anymore, but for
yeah,
going doing that same
yeah.
thing.
And now, right at this stage in my life, I've started going to concerts again. I started going back to concerts about 5 years ago, but I don't need to be high. I'm high on the
Yeah,
music, right?
yeah,
I'm literally high on the music.
and it
And
will.
looking
It's
at the
mind
other
altering.
Yeah, yeah. Looking at the people that are there that are getting drunk and partying and having fun, I just look at them and I think, I'm glad they're having fun, but I'm sure glad that's not me.
Yeah, because I was the guy that my friends were waking him up in the chair at the end of the concert. I had a problem with overshooting the mark. Hey
Yes.
Dan, come on, wake up! It's time to go. Concert's over, and I'll see those people at concerts I go to now. And they'll be partying that halfway through and having a good old time, and then at the end of the concert, I look over there and passed out in the chair, missed the last half of it. But
Or
music is
blackouts,
powerful.
right?
It is.
Waking up the next day and, oh, did you like this song? Well, I was blacked out by that time,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I
That
say
happened.
I never was a blackout drinker, but there was nights I couldn't remember. Uh,
Right, right. Same thing, buddy.
yeah, but I would use that justify that. I used to say that
Yeah,
I wasn't a
exactly.
blackout drinker,
Exactly.
But music is mind altering. It really is. It's a powerful thing. There's something to it. And obviously, how can we tell how old music is, right? It's old as probably humans themselves from chanting to just using their vocal cords to make music until they started actually tooling it up and making instruments. But I had never thought about it like in that mind altering ability that it has because it can bring you up, it can make you cry, it can
Oh, yeah, and
have
it's
you dancing,
so
and
healing. It's so healing. Like the Harvard did a study and said that music, it can give you focus, it can improve your memory, it can you get the endorphins. You get that from music. So you want
yeah,
to get high on music. It's eh, at the end of every chapter in my book, there's a QR code. So you can scan it
oh, can
and
you?
go and on YouTube and watch the video and listen to the
That is a
song
cool idea.
that was inspired by that story. So I literally put a soundtrack in my book.
Yeah, that is super cool. That is a great idea. I love that. uh do you I've had a couple of times where I've had musicians here. They just might happen to be a recovery person or something like that. And one gal does uh, I want to use a fancier term like she did, but she drums. She's a percussionist, and she had a drum she brought in with her to play a little of while here. And I'll tell you something that gets me. It doesn't make any difference who it is, and it really happens better when it's one on one. But I had a 20-year-old sponsee, here one day, and I got a piano that was my daughter's, and it just sits over there and it's out of tune and all that. And he said, "You mind if I play that piano for a minute?" And I was like, "Sure, go ahead." And when he does, that dopamine hits me or something, I get tingles up the back of my neck. I could get it at a concert and do that, but man, when I have got a musician playing, I've had a couple friends that brought their guitars in and sang to me just an acoustical guitar and sing on the podcast. It puts physical, like the goosebumps and this, I get this tingle up the back of my neck that, like he said, "You want me to stop?" And no, you don't ever have to stop. I will say, you got me the rest of the night. I'll just sit here until you get tired of playing. Uh,
Music is medicine.
yeah. Would you want to play a little bit?
No.
No.
Not quite ready for, an ad hoc.
Okay, that's
Sorry.
cool. I was just some
Thanks for
musicians
asking,
can't.
though.
I have a tremendous it is unbelievable how many people I know in recovery that have musical interests. They play something. I sponsored one guy. I sponsored him. I've been sponsoring for 6 months, and we talk every single day. And we're standing outside a meeting, and him and some guys are talking that they were playing music in one of the guys' garage the other night. And, I was like, What am I hearing?" And I said, "Well, I knew he played piano and I knew he played guitar. What do you play?" He said, "I play the drums." Like, how can I know you and be talking to you every day for 6 months and this is the first time I've heard of this? Uh, but they do that. They get together and jam, on Friday
Yeah,
night, just get together and play. I just know seems like a inordinate amount of 'em. We have a talent show here. And it's almost a joke in our group, but misery is optional is what they call it. And it's a talent show. It's coming up. Oh, it was this past weekend. I was going. If you
right.
want, if you don't get me in the first 2 weeks of November very often, I'm in the woods those weeks. But they just had it, and a whole bunch of people in 12-step recovery from around town get together and do a 2 day talent show and raise money for the recovery, the not recovery centers, but like the meeting houses, like the Al-Anons and, or I mean, the token clubs and, I think out west they call them, Alanos. I don't know what they call them in Canada, but I bet you got them someplace where they just have these
Yeah,
little buildings and you can go ahead and, meetings tend to either be in a church or at one of the clubs. They
right.
raise money for that. So, seems to be a, common thing. And of course, look at the musicians who aren't with us anymore because of substances, and how many of them are, recovered today. You hear quite often that, that people have it. There seems to be some kind of correlation between music and substance abuse.
Yeah, well, I think part of it too was in that whole rock and roll era when, when we went through that whole thing, there was no question that that was the culture, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Where
yeah,
now it's not so much the culture, but I think when you're a performer of any time and you're performing at night and you finish at 11 or 12 or 1 o'clock, you're too wired to want to go to bed. And so, how do you
yeah.
bring yourself down and self medicating, or continuing to party? Learning how to
That's good
navigate
points.
through that is part of the challenge.
Yeah, I'd heard some talk about like, within the 50s, they were alcoholics and all that, and like the 60s kids didn't wanna be like their parents, so they did drugs instead of drink so much,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
and
But
flip it
then,
around.
like you said, a lot of them went into recovery early enough and we talked about passion and purpose. Like, talk about people that are passionate about their jobs. The Rolling Stones are on tour,
Yeah,
right? Mick's 80 years old and he's still jumping around. Now, Mick, I get because he jogs 10 miles a day. Like that guy exercises a lot. But it's Keith Richards that I don't understand. He's, I guess, what we call an anomaly. He's
yeah,
definitely
definitely,
an outsider. But,
definitely,
like
definitely.
Ringo's on tour at 80 years old playing the drums, and somebody asked him, "How do you do it?" And he said, "Well, first of all, I stopped putting crap in my mouth years ago. And second of all, I work out 4 days a week. I have a gym in my house, so I eat healthy, I work out regularly." And I mean, that was what we were talking about earlier. You can still have a passion and a bounce in your step in your life without, like, when I first got out of addiction, it was my biggest fear was I didn't want to be perceived as a teetotaler. I was
Hmm.
a party girl. I wasn't a teetotaler. So I thought, the people that drink won't like me because I'm going to be boring. Until I realized I was more boring drunk than I was sober.
Yeah, there's some. I talk about this fairly often about these myths that we tell ourselves, and one of them is, "I won't have any more fun."
Yeah.
Things are going to be boring. I won't have any friends. I can't go to concerts. I can't, I can't go do the things that I used to do. And those are all myths. They are not true. My sponsor and I went and seen Buddy Guy a couple of months ago. I think Buddy is 87 or 88.
Okay.
And he don't move a whole lot. And I actually thought for a minute he had another guitarist that was as really great guitarist in himself. But I thought for a minute, I thought, Buddy is just tending to play, and that guy over there is the one really making the sound. And watched him for a little while, and I thought, no, because that guy's over there standing with his hands in his pockets at times, not really, but he didn't have his hands in playing position. And Buddy was still rocking it out at 88 years old.
I saw
It's fun to
something
see that.
similar to what you just described with Peter Frampton. I went to see him in Nashville, and he's actually got some sort of a neuro muscle disorder. Um,
Mm.
but exact same thing happened. He was playing to beat the band, but you could tell when he got maybe I need a little break, and that guitarist took over, right? And you could see it, but it was just so amazing the way he plays, right? And when
Yep,
he
yep.
plays, he plays.
I believe they were doing a little bit of this too, but uh, Buddy really was playing when he was playing, and he
Yeah.
still could.
I know, that's so
So
cool.
cool to
And
see.
that's the passion, right? They're passionate about what they're doing, so they're not, like I always say this retirement age of 65 is an ageism. Oh my God, don't get me started on that. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I mean, there are cultures that understand that the elders are the most respected in the community because they have the experience and the wisdom. And both of us live in countries where all of a sudden you're supposed to take a back step, and I don't know, I don't get that at all, at all. I think you can go get your PhD when you're 80 years old if you wanna.
People all the time and reinventing themselves at any particular point that they choose to do so. I don't think, like, again, I don't believe we were designed to be limited in that way. Uh, and especially, you know, I like having fun, and I want to keep on doing stuff that's keeping me fun. That makes me happy. And or at the end of this ride, uh, that I've got the least amount of regrets and things like that, and can smile back on it and say, "Hey, that was a good time, and I was a good dude, and I did most of my stuff. I helped more people than I hurt." Uh,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
and
yeah,
helping more people, like, that's a big thing. If somebody says to me, "I'm all down in the dumps today," I'll say, "Go help somebody. Go out, go do an act of kindness. Go to the soup kitchen, go," because that is going to completely shift what's going on in your brain, and you're going to lose that wozy me feeling. And yeah, so like,
that's I keep pointing to it, but invariably in the Big Book Alcoholics Anonymous, when he's talking about a problem, when you're running into this or this is happening to you, always in there will be find somebody to help.
yes,
Turn your
yes,
thoughts towards someone you can help.
yes.
That is the way out of every hole in that book.
Yeah. Yeah, and everywhere, right? There
Yep.
again, there's a chapter in my book called Home Away from Home. And it's a chapter about when you're traveling, be respectful of the people in the other countries and the other neighborhoods that you're going into. I say the locals have the magic because you're just, and some people are living in hell. Right? I
Sure.
mean, we're fortunate. We're living in developed countries, but not everybody is. And so, if you could put your kind face on when you're traveling, that's just like to me, that elevates you for sure.
Yep. I always say my smile is my strongest muscle.
Yeah,
I can totally change people just by smiling at them.
you can. Oh, absolutely
I
you
to
can.
walk through the grocery store with a smile on my face, and whether sometimes it's forced and sometimes it ain't. I'm usually a pretty happy dude, but people cannot look, well, no, vast majority of the people, if you're looking at them and you smile at them, they will smile back at you.
And
Um,
smiling gives you the dopamine again, right? They've proven that. I remember one time I think it was a Tony Robbins course I was taking, and somebody was whining about something in their life. Well, I can't do this, this, that. And Tony goes, "Okay." He says, "I'm going to hear you out, no problem. I'm going to hear this whole story, but I want you to smile while you tell me the story." Well, how could nope, I'm not listening. You have to tell me that. Well, the person couldn't keep in that little victimy mode with a smile on their face, and
yeah,
Tony knew it, right? Because you can't be once you smile, everything changes.
it is a powerful muscle. I tell people exercise it as much as you can every day.
Good for you.
Uh, and one other thought there towards that. And there's benefit to letting people whine a little bit, you know? I just think we also do that. I encourage my people to tell me the truth. Tell me about, you know, EITCH about the day if that's what you need to do. Get it out of your system because otherwise it sits down in there like poison. And when you express it to somebody safe like me, who's not going to try to fix it for you or not try to pat you down, empathize with you, then you get that poison out of you and you feel better. You know, and 9 times out of 10, I'll have those phone calls of somebody having something go bad with them, and I'll listen to what they have, you know, and then I'll gently change the subject to something else. And before the long, after a minute, the guy's laughing, you know, and we're talking and having a good time.
Yeah,
But kind of
yeah.
had to get that out of the way first, you know.
Right. Yeah. You let them get it out, and then, how is it serving you? Right? How is, feeling the way you do about that situation? How is it serving you? And, what, how's that working out? Like, would you like to see it different? Because like you said, you can't be preaching or trying to tell them what it is that they should be doing instead, but you could let them realize that, I it's important to like what I said, your best kept secrets. It's important to get things out and off your chest and deal with them,
Yep.
right? Find a way to deal with them, and sometimes just sharing them is the deal. All I had
Yep.
to do was share it, and I'm good to go.
Yep. I tell you, another one of my little sayings is that my sponsor hardly ever actually gives me my answers. You know, when I
Right.
come to him, he never gives me my answers, but I always come to my answers by speaking with him.
Yes.
There's some magic in, I still think the universe shines on that relationship that we have when we do this work together and it bonds you. And then you got this person that the universe gives you your answers along while you're talking to that person.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, a good coach doesn't tell
Beautiful.
you what to do.
Yep, yep. There was another piece in life though, and that really you have to go get a coach today. You know, 100 years ago, you kind of had a coach. You'd have a mentor. You'd be working down the street at the bootmaker, and old bootmaker guy would apprentice you. You know, because you can't hear it through your dad. Usually, we don't really get you get something through your parents. Not discounting that, but there's something you get from a stranger. People come in 12-step recovery and they like think that they want like I'll know a guy and I've known him for a while and he comes in and he wants me to sponsor him. Well, I can't sponsor you. It's going to be a stranger that helps you, dude. It's not going to be your friend that helps you. I'll be here to support you and we can be friends and I will support you. But there's a stranger comes in there and helps you. And we kind of I talked to Tom, you know, he had the same kind of thing about trying to reinvigorate the mentor apprentice kind of thing going on. And it happens in males and females. You know, it's a little different today than it would have been 100 years ago for sure. But the value of having somebody in your life that is cares about you, but yet still doesn't really have a dog in your fight
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
that can
I've always
guide you.
had somebody, either a life coach or a business coach or a a psychologist or a consultant. Like throughout my life, I didn't get through it without having folks to talk to through different periods. And a message that I always share too is that, and if you don't fit with the one you got, get another one. Don't
Another
say,
one.
"Oh, I've tried that before and it didn't work." I'll tell you, I had one psychologist that told me to tell my son that he was dead to me and that I was not going to pick up the phone again unless he was in recovery. And she said, and you're going to have to do that because he's going to take you down otherwise, and it's just going to be a matter of time. So I said to her, I said, well, I'm not going to stay with you. I'm going to go find a new psychologist because, first of all, I'm not going to tell my son he's dead to me. Like, that's just not in my vocabulary. And second of all, I had already learned a lot of the tools and I was compartmentalizing and having a successful business life and a good marriage and but I was still struggling with a kid on the street. And so I needed the additional little support to keep that, to work through it. And, you know, wrong fit, right? Maybe for some people that would work, but not for me. So I went and found someone else. And that's what I encourage everybody to do. Don't say I've already tried that. I've already tried a sponsor. I've already tried. No, it doesn't matter. Just because you tried it before doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful at trying it again.
I see that happen quite often when a guy will not be able to get sober with a person. I've had it with me where a guy's not able to, he just keeps relapsing. And I tell him, I have a three strikes and you're out rule. And it's only because what we're doing isn't working, brother. I'll help you find a new sponsor and stuff. But this, and I've seen it where they switch sponsors and boom, the bell rings and the guy's off for
Right.
no, who knows why, right? The
Right.
rapport between the two, whatever, I won't even try to guess why. But I see it happening enough that I make sure I keep that in my toolbox too and share it that, if you just may not be a fit with this particular coach or sponsor or whatever,
Yeah,
don't
absolutely.
give up on
Absolutely.
it.
Different approaches work for different folks.
Yep. Well, cool. Well, we've been going on an hour and 40 minutes or so. Uh,
Oh, wow. I had no idea we had been on that long. That's awesome.
yep, we have. So tell people where we can find, what am I kicking down there? I got my foot wrapped up in the cords. I need to do some cord management down there under that table. Uh, tell people where we can find you and anything else you want to say to
Oh, sure.
tie a
The
bow around
best
it.
place for finding me is my website, which is just gailtaylormusic.com. And Gail is Gail. So gailtaylormusic.com, because if you go there, you can get all my social media and everything else. And for folks, if you are interested in my book, I'll put it on the screen here. You can get it at like Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or yeah, anywhere you buy a book online,
As they
you'll
say,
find my book.
everywhere books are sold.
Yeah, online. I don't think you'll get them in your stores right now in the US, but
Yeah.
you'll definitely
What's
get
on
them.
the cover? What is on the cover?
It's a hand with a butterfly.
Okay, I can see
The
it now.
butterfly has
Music.
music notes on
Very cool.
it. Right? So it's called Curveballs: Unlocking Your Potential Through Personal Growth and Inspirational Music. And yeah, it's just about my journey and how curveballs keep coming at me. And they're going to keep coming at me. They're going to keep coming at you. They're going to keep coming at your listeners.
Yep.
So,
There's a
why
lot
not?
of guys hit curveballs over the fence. I
Yeah,
see it
yeah.
on in baseball on a regular basis.
There you go. So,
It doesn't
yeah.
have to be
So,
a strike.
I think the last thing you said, is there anything else I'd like to share? The only thing I can say is never give up. Never give up. Never give up. It doesn't matter if you've relapsed one times, two times, eight times. Doesn't matter if you're 20 years old or you're 70 years old. Don't give up. Next time you try it, could very well be the one that's going to work for you. And so don't make that decision that, no, I've already tried it enough. Life is really, really good when you're on the other side of addiction. And Yeah, I just say, don't beat yourself up for not making it yet even. Like relapse is part of the disease. And so just accept that and give yourself shake it off and go for it again.
Yep, it's probably as much as a powerful thing as anything we could even tell people. Is just don't give up. You lose for sure if you do. And we say keep coming back until the miracle happens. And well, I see that to be uh, I see that to be the truth.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, and I'm
All
really
right.
honored that you had me. I enjoyed talking to you. I had no idea how much how much time had gone by. This was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yep. Behind the podium, you get about an hour, 40 minutes when you get up and tell your story at an AA meeting.
Yeah,
Well, I sit here and go a little bit more long form, and a person feels like they actually were able to like have some level of completion in their storytelling. You always step down off the podium and go, "Daggone, I forgot to," and or I didn't have time to say, or this kind of thing. So I run it a little bit longer form, and I'm pretty used to sitting here talking to people for 2 hours, but they won't think so. I'll say, in 2 hours and 10 minutes. Nuh-uh. Come here, look. The thing's got a timer on it. It'll tell me how long we've been recording. But I have fun doing this. I had never had any idea, so many things. And nothing, I didn't aim for much, to recovery. I was getting ready to go to prison. Is what I was getting ready to do. I had a 6 to 20 year potential prison sentence on me that scared me into getting sober. And then, yeah, January will be 10 years, and I never thought I was going to have so much fun talking to people. Whether
right,
if it's, doing this podcast, it juices me up. It's kind of like after you talk about playing to the music till 8 or 10. I always have to be careful because I'll be on this high for about 45 minutes, but then it'll crash off, and I need to make sure that I've got that, or I try to make sure that I know that's going to happen, so I get a little downtime before I have to get into something, before I get into something else. So one
right,
of the
right.
with you talking about changing that language, I harp on people all the time when they say I have to. I say you get to. I have to go
Yeah.
pick up my kids in a little bit. You get to change that. Just change that in your language and watch it change. Watch it rewire you just by believing that you get to do this and you get to do that, not have to do this and have to do
Oh,
that.
100%. In fact, I say that to one of my sisters all the time. I have to go visit mom today. Mom's amazing. She's 94 years old and she's a beautiful soul. And so if a sister says, I have to go visit mom today, I say, no, you get to go visit mom today.
Yeah,
You don't have to. You get to. That's like cool stuff.
yeah, I'm such a stickler for it. People try to assign it to me, and I was like, no, somebody else. I'm not bringing any new stuff to the table, folks. I'm just taking filtering it through my experience and picking up tools from other people.
Yeah, you're like
Uh,
me. I'm told that's exactly, even in the beginning of my book, I say that I didn't reinvent anything here. I didn't come up with any of these tools. I just learned them and applied them and they work. So I'm sharing them with you.
Yep. And we all put our personal, what we say, experience, strength, and hope in recovery. We all put it through our own experience and strength and hope filter, and it comes out uniquely in your voice. And somebody, somebody, there's people out there tuned into that frequency, just ain't heard that yet. They're just waiting to hear that frequency because that's what's going to get into them. That's why we all got to be out here doing this work because we don't know which one needs to hear who.
Good stuff.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate you. I was thinking about when this is going to come out. Um, this will be out next Sunday. I put out new content on Sunday mornings.
All
Well,
right.
I will, I'm pretty sure yeah, I have a way to get a hold of you and all that. So I'll make sure the link and all that gets to you. Your website's easy enough to get to. So I don't need anything out of you. I like that one stop shopping.
Okay.
Instead of
Thank
10 different
you.
links.
Oh my
Thank you.
God.
Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Yeah, you too. Have an amazing day.
Bye
Bye
bye.
then.